And there we go. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our ServiceNow Tips and Tricks webinar series. So I'm Anita Collins, and well, we'll introduce everyone in here in just a second. Oh, okay. Thanks, Rebecca. So I'm Anita Collins. I'm with the ServiceNow engagement team, and we have with us Rebecca Jones, who is with the Connect Carolina Change Management team and is helping us out with ServiceNow right now. And also here we have Allison Campbell, and I believe Riaz Ahmed is on the line. So we'll tap him if we have questions for him. But the focus for today's webinar, originally it was ad hoc approvals, which we are going to talk about, but we've also collected some other things that have come up that people have had questions about. So it's a little bit of a mix of topics today. So we're going to, like I mentioned, we are going to talk about our recommended way to add ad hoc approvers to service requests. Rebecca's going to talk about ways to see customer history. And then we're also going to talk about the CRC button, which is the customer repair services button that you can see in incidents. Okay, and then we should have lots of time for questions at the end. And as usual, if you've joined in the past, feel free to go ahead and type your questions at any time, but we'll also have some time at the end that are dedicated to your questions. So you guys who've been our frequent flyers know the routine. This is about 20 minutes of content this time. We are recording the webinar and we are putting it on our ServiceNow website, which we'll show you in just a sec. You can use the Q&A box or the chat box to type in your questions. So you can ask us questions about what we're currently talking about or just any questions that you have related to ServiceNow. Thank you. Okay, so we have been having last two times we had technical difficulties getting the recording up, but they are all up there now, and hopefully it'll go a little more smoothly the next time. But okay.
Well, the recording's going great, but the slides not so much. There we go.
Okay, so if you're not on the ServiceNow Teams site yet, be sure to join. That's a good way to post questions, and it's been great to see that some of the questions are answered by the team, but also some of them are answered by others using ServiceNow, so it's a great way to share information and get tips. So we found a shorter way to get there. If you type the URL go.unc.edu/ServiceNow team, it will take you straight there and let you sign up. So much quicker way to get there. So see you on Teams, hopefully. I mentioned the ServiceNow website. So it's servicenow.sites.unc.edu. So two of the useful things right now are the recordings of the webinars, but also this is where we're posting the updates as we make them. So we're on a 2-week development cycle right now. So every 2 weeks, we release a new batch of fixes and improvements and things that people have asked for. So if you go to it's under decisions right now. We're in the process of reorganizing this website as well, but it's under decisions and then sprints. And you can see what the latest batches of fixes and changes are. So that's out there. It usually gets posted pretty much the day that the fixes go out.
We have another subject matter expert in the room now.
We sure do.
Am I supposed to be here?
Yep.
So David Smith, who is our developer leader extraordinaire, also came in to answer all the hard questions.
Oh, great.
So we're sending everything his way that's hard.
Okay.
This is a webinar. There's people on there. You knew
Yes,
that. Okay.
yes.
Yeah. You are being recorded, just FYI. Okay. So if you joined us for the last webinar or watched the recording, we spent a lot of time talking about notifications, but we wanted to talk about just really briefly one more tip that, I don't know, did we talk about this last time?
Briefly, yeah, Alice. Well, yes, it was talked about in the recording. I briefly mentioned it.
Okay.
For the
all right.
record.
Well, we wanted to talk about it again because the notifications are still a work in progress. So we've made some improvements, but we're not quite where we want to be yet. We're hearing that people are saying we're still seeing too many notifications. But one thing that we did in the last couple of releases was we added more of the unsubscribe links. Now this is just for fulfillers. So due to phishing concerns, our end users, our customers, don't have an unsubscribe link in their communications. But if you're a fulfiller, which you guys are, there's an unsubscribe link in probably most of the communications. It's just a quick way to stop getting that particular type of email. So if you don't want to get a notification anytime that there's been a new ticket assigned to your assignment group, like not to you specifically, but to your entire group, you could click unsubscribe to that email in it, and you'd stop getting those particular emails. So anyway, just a little bit of a quick tip for reducing the number of emails that you get. Outlook is just a great way also for filtering out.
Yeah, there's so many rules you could set, but
yeah. Okay. All right, so this actually, I want to thank the folks who brought this up at one of our earlier webinars, because it really gave us we've been focusing on how to add approvers who are not in your service request workflow. So ad hoc approvers. And the thing is, so we're still actively discussing this functionality. So we don't have like a final answer for you guys on the best way to do this, but we do have a way that we're recommending, but it may not work in all situations. So we do want it, Rebecca's going to demo that for us. But you guys have probably found that there are some tabs at the bottom of the service request that let you add an approver or a group of approvers. And we talked a little bit about this at an earlier webinar, but there are some downsides to doing approvals that way. So one of the challenges is that you can add an approver and send out that approval, but you could the request could be closed before the approval actually comes in. So there's nothing in, if you add the approver and it's not part of your regular workflow, there's nothing to say, don't close this request because I'm still waiting for an approval. So that's a real challenge. So you may think that approval has been recorded in the request when actually it closed before the approval was done. So that's a downside. And then also, if you send an approval out that way, the person getting it, if they're not using ServiceNow day to day, it may be a little bit confusing for them. So they're going to be asked to kind of come into ServiceNow and do an approval, and it's just not part of their normal workflow. So if you know your approvals, boy, is that hard to say. Okay, if you know your approvers, then you'll know whether that's a problem or not, but just something to be aware of. So again, we have another way to do it. We're not saying this is the final end all solution, but we're going to recommend it. And this is, what to think about when doing it using the tabs. There's some definite downsides to using these tabs to do approvals. So our recommended way is through using the ellipsis email. We don't have a good way. There's no catchy name for that. It's the
3 dots.
The 3 dots.
3 dots.
Then the email.
Yeah. So Rebecca's going to show you that method.
I am. And you know what? If I can, before I jump into that demo, there was a slide that we also wanted to show you, but was hidden for some reason.
Uh-oh.
So can I jump back up there, or we can go back to this at the end with the tasks, the standalone tasks?
Let's go back.
Go back at the end? Okay, let's do that. All right. So as Anita just said, there is a workaround for using the ad hoc approval tabs, which is the ellipses email option. And you do this from a service request, and I'm going to go into a task to demo this. You will do the ellipses email at the item level, at the RITM level. So of course, I'm in the task level, but to get up to the item level, just click on the preview this record and open record. So now, great, I'm up at the RITM. And first thing I'm going to do is click the 3 dots or ellipses, more options, and click email. Great, so it opens up this compose email form. And over here to the right, we have quick messages. If you click that drop down and select approval template, it gives you a lovely approval message template here down in the body, which you can change. For example, your approval is requested for the, fill in the blank there. Describe what needs to be approved here. So you can add in your own information. You can add extra information altogether down here in the body. But let's talk about what's up here at the top of this form. Reply to, in this field, go ahead and leave that blank. When this email is replied to, it will go right into the ticket under activities, and it'll say additional comments. So that's how you'll know that it's been responded to. And do you also get an email notification?
If you are added as somebody in the CC or BCC, then yeah.
Oh, great tip. Okay, so we'll talk about that too.
And yes, you would also trigger the email notification that happens when additional comments is updated.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So yes, it'll go in additional comments under the activities part of your ticket, and you will get an email. Okay, great. So long story short, this reply field, go ahead and leave that blank. In the to field, this is where you'll type in the person you are seeking approval from. And you can copy and paste a list in here, but after you copy and paste the list in, make sure you press return. Otherwise, you can go ahead and type in each email manually.
So I do want to emphasize that.
Yes.
Pressing enter, if you don't, it basically gets blanked out when you submit.
Mm-hmm.
So just try to remember to always press return after you paste in email addresses.
Awesome.
And we've discovered that from an incident someone submitted, and we've actually escalated that up to ServiceNow. I believe they are going to be fixing that in a future patch release, but
Patch 5. We're on 4B right now. Patch 5 should be out in a couple of weeks.
okay.
Oh, that's
So,
good. Good.
yeah.
Hey.
In the meantime, make sure you hit enter after you make the copy
Yeah.
paste
Yeah.
into these fields.
In the to field? Okay. CC field will be the customer, but Allison was telling me earlier something about the assumption of you can add extra people here. So Allison, if you want to speak to that a little more.
Yeah, so we've actually gotten some questions about why the requested for. So Rebecca in this scenario is the requested for person. Why that isn't in the to field. ServiceNow is making the assumption that if you're sending an ellipses email, you're not sending it to the person who's requested for, because the way to do that is by using additional comments. So it just pops them into the CC field, assuming that you need to add additional people in the to field to actually receive the email. So
I can even type in your name here, Allison. There you are. Just to kind of demo that. And I can keep typing in. Yep. And then, of course, the blind carbon copy, add here if you need to. The subject, it's already filled in for you. It has the RITM number, and I guess it's alluding that you need a request.
Of the, yeah.
That's a short description.
The short description.
Okay.
Okay. So should people leave that alone then? Change it maybe so it makes more sense to the approver, perhaps? Guess it just depends.
It depends, but if the customer put that in, then it's their quick reference to look at it. Oh, the subject. Oh, this is something that I submitted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
If you had additional information to give the approver, I would put that in the body of the message.
Okay.
Like where it says, describe what needs to be approved here. I would give them all the details you need to give them for them to be able to say, yes, I do or don't approve down there.
Okay. And also, if you need to attach anything to this email, you can do it by using the paperclip up at the top right. And when you're ready, you just go ahead and click send. I'm going to click send.
Sounds good.
Recipient required to log. Oh, yeah. I'm not sending it to anybody. I'm going to send it to Elson. She's just going to get everything. Okay. Okay. Can you see that chat box? Okay, good. No.
Okay.
That's okay. So that is how you use the ellipses email option to get approval on service requests. I guess I'll pause here for a second and we'll see if there's any questions on this before we move on to the next. The next topic will be seeing customer history, which is very quick. Just more of a reminder, if anything. I don't see anything coming in yet. Oh, we do have one. Okay. In regard to hitting enter after putting a group in the to field, is that also an issue for individuals or just groups?
So if you're typing someone's name in who's a user in ServiceNow, it's going to look them up because that's actually a search field. But if you're typing in someone's name who just isn't in ServiceNow for whatever reason, yeah, I would make sure you hit that enter just in case.
Okay. Great question. Any others before I move on? Any other things from anyone here in the room before I move on?
Just saying that, so really the two approval methods, we just to reiterate that we're still looking at those and we'll give more guidance. The email method is the one we recommend for now, but as we've socialized and kind of talked about that method, people have had, some things that they don't like about it, and we're just going to keep looking at it, but we recommend this method for now.
Yeah, just to expand on that a little bit, it's more or less of an approval light. It allows the fulfillers to be able to communicate for simple things that they might need approval on, and also have a record of it in the incident.
Yeah.
Or request.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move on to ways to see customer history. And way number one, of course, is using this global search up in the top right. It's the magnifying glass icon. And if you type in the person's name of which you want to see their history, I'll type in my name. It will show open tickets, it will show closed tickets, and it will show both service requests and incident tickets. And also, if that person happens to be a fulfiller, it will show tickets that were assigned to them as well. So global search will show you everything. Another option is,
And I think,
oh, sorry. You want me to move something?
no, I just wanted to mention that I think people don't always notice the list on the right that lets you, so when you do the search, it gives you this long list, but it's actually grouped by what type of result it is. And if you look over to the right, then you can see how many results there were by each type, and you can click on that to scroll right to that part of the list.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, the what's on the page, they're referring to what's on this page over here.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's great.
And that is, I think, the best way to see closed tickets, right?
It is.
This is the best way to see closed tickets.
Okay, thanks, Anita. The other way to see tickets is if you are in the actual ticket. So for example, I have a SC task up on my screen right now. Nope, I need to go requested for. So requested for, if you just click on the show related items, it will show other service requests that the customer has submitted. And these are only open tickets, and only service requests. But if I happen to be in an incident, I'm going to jump out to an incident. Oops, let me find one. Here we go. Under the caller field, because remember caller is incidents requested by, same thing is what the customer is called in a service request. But again, there is that show related incidents. It will only show incidents that they have open. And it shows closed here.
Closed? What?
Allison said it actually shows closed here too. All right. And okay, we good on that? All right. So two options to see customer history is global search, and then when you're within the ticket. And we're gonna keep moving it along. I don't think any questions have come in. No, doesn't look like it. Nope.
I'd like to just add one thing to the global
Yes,
search.
please.
The global search, even though you're searching for an individual, if there's a particular incident you created or a request that you created and you can't find it, you don't know where it was, you forgot the number, you can also type in, let's say it was a VPN network. You could type in that and it'll bring back all the, you don't have to necessarily search for just an individual.
Yeah.
Keywords.
Yeah.
Big keywords.
Yep.
It is really a global search for
Anything you want to search
anything you want
Yeah.
to search for.
Yeah.
And actual ticket numbers. If you have the ticket number, you can pop that in there as well. Yeah. Great.
It's a good way to find knowledge articles.
Yes, knowledge
Plug in
articles,
for
of course.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anything in the platform.
Yeah.
And speaking of knowledge articles, there is one out on the next topic, which is the CRC button, but Anita is going to give you even more information live.
Oh, yes, that's
so
right.
I'm going to get my screen ready so we can demo as you explain.
Okay. So we have had a few questions on how to see the CRC button. So this is if you need to do a computer repair, this is how to access the CRC application from ServiceNow. So if you did this in Remedy, this is how we're going to talk about how you do this now. If you don't do this currently, you can tune out for just a few minutes, or if you think you would like to work on an arrangement with the Computer Repair Center, then reach out to Peter Bolish, and he can you guys can work out a relationship with him. But we're not going to go into a huge amount of detail about this, but the button is hidden unless you know how to display it. So we thought we would give you that clue on how to see that button. So let's go to an incident. So if you can create a new incident, that's great. Thank you. And if you want to see the CRC button, you type Computer Repair Services in the Business Service field, and you click Save.
I'm going to make myself the caller for this one.
Okay.
Okay. And you know what? I'm going to just, so I don't freak out the CRC, I'm just going to say this is training.
Oh, that's good. Well, we're not actually going to submit.
If anyone on the CRC is on there, it does.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I apologize. Okay. So, and you said click Save.
Yeah.
Okay. And which you can do that by the hamburger bun here, or you can right click in the gray area and that'll come up. Okay.
Okay. All right. So now in the top right-hand corner, you see the CRC button. And so now you can click on it and it will take you to Remedy. You'll have to sign in first. Okay, and so that's it. So there are a few other things there, like Rebecca mentioned, there is a knowledge article that you can search for. If you search for CRC, it should come right up, and it gives you more details about how this works. One tip is that you can see that Get Info button near the top, and that will pull in information from the incident that you just came from into this request. Let's see. I don't want to go into too much detail about the rest of the pieces, but I do want to mention that you can use this application to check out a loaner. And if you do that, that's okay. Okay. You don't have to show, but if you do check out a loaner, that information, not the information about the loaner, but it will go back to the incident and mark that you have checked out a loaner. So a new field will pop up called, it's called loaner. Yeah, checked out basically, and it'll say yes. And if you have a loaner checked out, it won't let you close the incident until the loaner is checked back in. So that's new and cool, and that will show up when you submit your the repair request.
Yeah, once you've gone through and you've submitted. Yeah. You also have the loaner check-in agreement, which is the agreement you can get the customer to sign. Yeah. When they turn their broken laptop over to you. Yeah.
And the service request, you can see that button all the time, the CRC button, and it allows you to print a check-in agreement from there as well.
And that's for doing like software updates for the customer drops off their laptop.
Yeah. Yeah. So if somebody just doesn't really have a broken computer or isn't in a situation where they need to, the computer doesn't need to go to the CRC, but they just need to check it in to get a piece of software updated or have their computer reimaged, and you need to get that check-in sheet printed off so that you have something to attach to the computer when they leave it. You can do that in a service request with the CRC agreement button. It's up there in that top as well.
We have a comment that came in from Keith. He said he's pretty sure that you'll find that the button is visible in all incident forms. You just can't submit.
Okay. So Keith.
Okay, I'll stop.
No, that's good.
You are special, Keith.
Yes, you are special. Keith. So we can just go ahead and mention that the walk-in group in the help desk and the School of Medicine IT support group see the button all the time. So that's absolutely true for those groups. They do so many of these that it just would be too much of a pain to not show the button. So it is there all the time. They still also have to put in the customer repair services in the business systems field to actually be able to submit a request that way. So if they, they don't put that value in the business services field, they can go out to the CRC application, but they won't actually be able to submit a request. But you're absolutely right, Keith.
He said, thanks for clarifying. And he said, sorry if that confused things. And it did.
No.
We appreciate your comment.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Thanks, Keith.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So I do also want to mention that other information that goes back to the incident is, let's see, I just pulled it up. So the serial number of the equipment, the model and serial number of the equipment being repaired goes back to the service or to the incident. And also the CRC ticket will go back to the incident. And you won't see those fields until there's a need to store them. So if you go to look at an incident, that you won't see blank fields that don't show a model number and serial number. When the information comes back from the CRC application, those fields will pop up and show and contain that information. So just FYI, that's how that works. So if you don't do those requests now, you can just kind of tune out what we just told you. But there is, if you do use these types of requests, then remember there's a knowledge article that has all those details in it and talks about how the integration between the two applications work and how to get that button to show, because a month from now when you need to do it and you can't remember, that'll be out there. So.
Thank you. So it doesn't look like any other questions or comments have come in about that. So how about if I jump back into that PowerPoint and we talk about the standalone tasks?
Sounds good.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so we're talking about several kind of squishy things right now, and one of them is are the standalone tasks. So right now, we got a report that there are 434 tasks out there. These are service request tasks that don't have an item or request tied to them. So basically, they were created. There's a screen that we're not showing right now, but that lets you go directly to creating a new task, not from a service request. So some of you probably already found that, and we're not saying don't do that. We've had a lot of discussion about this function with different groups recently, just trying to understand better kind of why they're there and how they're being used. And so it sounds like there are some reasons to create these, but we also really, really want you to be aware of why it might not be the best solution for all needs. So if you create a task this way, it doesn't allow you to communicate with the customer. So remember, anytime you have to communicate with a customer, you have to go to the item level. Well, if a task is created as a completely standalone task, there isn't an item associated with it. And so there is no way to reach out to the customer from the task, and there's no way to record comments from the customer in this task. There's work notes, you can type work notes, but there isn't any way to have a back and forth with the customer on these types of tasks. There's also no way to categorize these tasks, so they're kind of like off on their own, and there's no way to associate a category with them. And so when we start thinking about reporting from ServiceNow, they're going to kind of just be their own, off on their own, and there's no way to group them and say, this is how many, hardware requests or whatever we're getting right now. They're just kind of off on their own. And then, the last thing to think about is that a lot of our dashboards and views are built around service requests or items. And if you create a standalone task, they might not show up in the views that you use every day. So just things to think about, because as we're all trying to figure out the best ways to work in ServiceNow, we have heard that some people use these tasks to just create work, record work for themselves, and they're going to, they just record what they've done and close the task, and it's just out there and they don't need it to show up on any reports or or anything. It's just for them. So that might be a scenario where that it doesn't cause you any problems. But if you're using it to work with a customer request or to send work to someone else, we have heard some situations where people have been assigned tasks and they're trying to work them just like any other service request task, but then they realize they don't have a way to communicate with the customer or report what they've done with the customer. So it's just something to be aware of. If it's completely for yourself and you don't need it to show up on any reports and you're not, you close them immediately, then it might be an okay solution. But definitely, if there's any chance that there's going to be interaction with customers or that you might need to report on this work, this would not be a good solution for doing that. Allison?
Yeah, I would just say it's not really obvious if you are assigning one of these standalone tasks to a different person that it is a standalone task. The way most people are realizing that that's happening is because they go up to that RITM or request field and they don't see the number there. And we've actually gotten some incidents and we've had feedback that, oh, we've got these tasks and we had to kind of dig to figure out why they were even happening that way. That's how we figured out it's because people are using the standalone task option. So just know that it can cause some confusion, especially if you're sending it to someone else.
Yeah.
We have a couple comments that have come in. We have one from Keith that says, there are some service request workflows that aren't fleshed out sufficiently for the needed tasks to be automatically created. So our teams have found that they sometimes need to generate a new task to assign to another assignment group in order to complete a request. So for example, he said, set up a new PC sometimes requires that we get a network jack installed, activated by the networking team, and we've generally felt that it makes sense to give them a separate task in such cases.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're doing that by going down to the bottom of the RITM and clicking on new catalog task for so that we keep this as not confusing as possible. We're going to call those types of tasks where you are adding them to a request that came in via the portal an ad hoc task. These standalone tasks that we're talking about are created a different way. Those ad hoc tasks are fine. We absolutely know that there are a lot of workflows that are not going to take into account every single task that needs to be created. But the standalone tasks that we're referring to are accessed a different way. And maybe we need to show.
Yeah, we can show it because we didn't. Yeah,
I know.
And Keith said, to the best of my knowledge, yes. And he said, okay, got it. Separate tasks, understood.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, Keith, actually, because I think that's an important distinction. So we're not saying that you shouldn't add tasks to service requests at all. We're definitely not saying that. You will need to do that regularly, and those will be attached. And also, if you're doing like the fulfiller service request, that's an actual service request, and it creates it normally. The request something else, same thing. That's an actual service request, and you can add tasks to that. So we're not talking about that at all. We're talking about going into ServiceNow and directly creating a task basically from nothing. So,
and actually, to add a little bit more clarification to that, going into ServiceNow is going over to the application navigator, typing tasks, scrolling down, and clicking on the task.
Shall we show?
And at the top bar, you can click new. And it's not associated with anything else.
That's right.
We were trying not to show what we're talking about, so we don't encourage people to use this. But I think maybe for some
for clarity, I think.
Let's do it. As I'm getting back into the system, a clarification question came in from Anne, and she's asking, is the approval recommendation to not use the approval tab under SC task? And I think we're recommending you use the ellipses email, but
we know there's going to be more discussion in this area.
We just, for full transparency, we did actually talk about turning those tabs off so that you wouldn't have the ability to add those ad hoc approval tasks at the bottom, but we're deciding not to do that and just suggesting the email as an alternative option at this point, because there are certainly some use cases where you need to be able to do that ad hoc approver at the bottom. We're just suggesting that the email may also be a way you could do that without running into the issues that you run into when you add the ad hoc approval.
Okay. Yeah. So
good way of putting it.
I am now going back to what we were talking about, adding an ad hoc task versus a standalone task. To add an ad hoc task, I am at the requested item level. I'm at the rhythm of a ticket. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. And where it says catalog tasks, if I click new, this is considered adding the ad hoc task.
Which is okay. This is the one that's very fine. Yeah.
Yes. And the other way, the standalone task, I go to,
I usually type in service catalog.
yeah, and then right to tasks, right? You can tell how much I don't do this.
Good job, Rebecca.
Yeah, right. Service catalog. There we go. Tasks. And new. And, well, shall I fill it all out? And no. Okay. Well.
We just wanted to point out that you're basically just going in the system to a new button. Basically, you're finding the right spot and going to the new button instead of finding like a service request that you're going to tie this request to. Yeah.
The main way you can see the difference is that request item on the right doesn't have anything, and it won't have anything because you're doing this outside of a regular request item task structure.
Skipping everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was that. Let's see if there's more questions that have come in or comments. There haven't. We have a couple minutes left, so if anybody wants to type something in the chat box or the Q&A box, we're going to be here for another minute. We have another one. Here we go. But if you did want to tie one of those to a rhythm, you could enter the item number manually there.
You could. That's true. It's a little unwieldy list, but it is that you're absolutely right.
It's doable.
Yeah.
Keith with the tips and tricks today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's how, so he actually suggested that because this is kind of a workaround for if you end up with a standalone task scenario that actually should have been associated with a request, somebody just didn't know to go down to the bottom, you can pull it in.
Awesome.
Oh, that's a great, that's a good tip.
So I guess just to demonstrate that real quick as we're waiting for other questions to come in, Keith just gave a great tip that if you do create one of these standalone tasks, and as Allison said, maybe it was supposed to be associated with a requested item, you can type that in to that field there.
Yeah,
and
so
then
you can create the request after the task and then associate the two.
Yeah.
And I believe that even the logic behind it, when you go to close out those tasks, it will still not close the rhythm.
Oh, is that right?
Because
Cool.
you've added
Okay.
a task.
You've turned the standalone task into an ad hoc task and associating the rhythm with it.
Very okay.
Or
He
you
said,
could-
just saying. We have another question that came in. It said, when using the customer visible additional comments to communicate with the user, is there an easy way to include an email signature?
That's a good question.
Good question, Ethel. Got kind of some faces, some shaking heads. No.
You can copy
Copy
paste
and
into
paste,
that field,
that's
but
pretty
there's
much-
not a way for you to insert a signature, like always. I think
Okay,
copy
so-
paste.
Copy paste.
You can have like a notepad.
It's a really simple text field.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of formatting you can do, or
You could just have like a little notepad and put your signature in there and just have it open while you're working tickets, I guess.
Okay.
Good question, though. You stumped us for a second.
Okay. So no other questions or comments have come in. Nope. Here we go. Here's another one. She said, so we can use the template instead. This is also from Ethel.
So the template, so really if you only need to communicate directly with the customer, the additional comments is probably the way to go. The template is really for doing approvals and recording that approval in the ticket. We don't currently have templates that are for general ticket communications or anything.
Correct.
So, but Claire, if that's not what you were asking, just please ask us again.
So the template, the quick message is for approvals from folks who are not in the built-in workflow of approvers.
That's right. That's right.
So say I submitted a request for access to something, but Dave actually really needed to approve that I could have that access. I'm the requested for, and we need to get approval from Dave by using the ellipses email and the approval template. We can easily send an email to Dave by putting him in the to field rather than asking approval for me, because that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And that's a great example. And to expand on the difference in the types of approvals, if this was, let's say, a pay invoice, and I put in the request to purchase something, and I needed approval, then you probably want to build that into the workflow and use the approval mechanism and create an approval task.
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like the questions and comments have slowed down. Nope. Every time I say that, one comes in.
Which
Tricky,
is good.
tricky.
We like those, yeah.
Okay. What is the best way to provide an automated response to a customer when a ticket is picked up by a member of our assignment groups? Could we create our own email template for requests and incidents?
There really isn't a mechanism for an individual fulfiller to be able to enable auto response for when tickets are assigned. So as they come in, I'm assuming they're referring to as a state of new and do an automatic notification out for an individual fulfiller.
Can
If
fulfillers can't create their own quick messages, can they, or can they?
No, not right now.
Not right now. Okay.
We're hoping that that might be something in the future.
Okay. Okay, cool.
All right. Thank you for that question.
Good question,
Yeah. So it looks like I'm gonna dare do I say it that the Q&A box is kind of quiet, chat box is kind of quiet. We have a minute or two more, so if you want to go ahead and type in your questions, please do, or comments, or if you know a tip or trick related to what we're talking about today or not, go ahead and share that.
Yeah, if you have a tip to share as well, then we would love to hear it, and we can, we'll give you credit in the webinar. But let us know. You can send it to anita_collins@unc.edu, and I'd love to hear it. We can maybe put it in our announcement that we send every couple of weeks when we have a batch of changes. We started including tips there. So we'd love to hear your tips and tricks as well that we can share with everyone else. And your questions, if you think of questions that you'd like covered in future webinars, we'd love to hear those as well. We can do a little research and put something together to show everyone.
Okay, looks like we have one more. If you marked something as closed incomplete, can that be revived by the user?
Are we talking about an incident or a request?
Request.
No, once the workflow behind that, once it's closed,
It's
the best
closed.
practice is to go in and create a new service request.
Okay.
However, here's a little tip. In incidents,
There we go.
if the customer receives the response that an incident was successfully resolved, the customer has the ability to respond to that email and put in the subject, say, please reopen, and it'll automatically reopen it and change the status to work in progress.
Really? Okay.
It recognizes just the comments saying reopen it. Wow.
Is it the word reopen that does it?
Please reopen.
Please, you have to say please.
Please.
Okay, okay. I love, seriously, you have to say please. I love that. Okay, I love that. Yeah, that has to be in the tip in the future newsletter.
Let's see, we have another one. She was saying either. Yeah, so service request or incident. So Alpha, hopefully we answered that. Let us know if we didn't. It's quiet. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well, so thanks everybody for joining us. Again, the recording hopefully will be there, fingers crossed, in a couple of days on the ServiceNow.sites.unc.edu website. And
I'll also put it up on the team site too.
okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Yep. And be sure, speaking of, please join teams and post there, ask questions. It helps us understand kind of what people are struggling with or learning. And we will see you hopefully in a couple of weeks. So thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.